on this special episode of No-Win Scenario with Trevor and Don.
I posted about how Robert Patterson was going to be starring in a film based on one of my books. I must have gotten 2,000 replies in the first hour and a half after that. You idiot. The greatest actor of our generation is starring in a film based on your book, and you can't even spell his name. They were so mad.
I haven't listened to anything you've said in the last 20 seconds.
Damn it, Trevor. We had a shtick.
Line.
Two friends who hate each other.
Rude.
Talking science fiction.
It has become this cultural phenomenon.
Along with some special guests.
I appreciate what Star Trek did to me.
I would love to have this book get banned.
That wasn't acting. That was real.
Do you know what our YouTube channel is?
Absolutely not. No-Win Scenario.
With Trevor and Don.
Okay, we're not doing that.
Boom.
Hey, Trevor. Hey, Trevor. Hey, look where we are. Look over there. What do you see?
I see the West Newton Cinema.
What's playing?
Well, Mickey 17's playing.
You want to go see it?
Yeah, I've been wanting to see it for a while.
You know, it's based on that book, Mickey 7, right?
Yeah, I read half of it.
Well, you've got about 2 hours left to read the rest of it, because I think Ed Ashton, the author, is going to be there.
No way, he's gonna be there?
Yeah, I think we should crash the whole thing and just like ask him a million questions.
Yeah, I got a couple questions I could ask.
All right, let's go.
Okay.
Let's go. Oh shit. Trevor.
Yes.
We can't cross the street, we're gonna die. Any other thoughts?
Every time I'm around you, I wanna die.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the season 3 premiere of the No-Win Scenario podcast. I'm Don Schechter. And with me, as always, is my dark shadow, my little friend here, Trevor.
Hi, everyone.
Trevor, everyone. Stop talking. Okay. We are live today at the West Newton Cinema in West Newton, Massachusetts, with Edward Ashton, the author of Mickey 7, and an audience who's just watched Mickey 17. So Ed, thanks again for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really do appreciate the opportunity.
I'm going to steal from your book.
Please do.
Oh, thank you. Your About Me section at the end. Edward Ashton is the author of the novels The Fourth Consort, Now Goes to War, Mickey 7, Antimatter Blues, 3 Days in April, and The End of Ordinary. His short fiction has appeared in venues ranging from the newsletter of an Italian sausage company to Escape Pod, Analog Science Fiction and Fact, and Fireside Magazine. In his free time, he enjoys cancer research, teaching quantum physics to sullen graduate students, and whittling. I got to stop those sausage company. Before we get into your work, like I've seen that everywhere, your website. Can you explain?
True story. True story. My first published piece, a very long time ago, I did sell to the newsletter of an Italian sausage company. Why they decided they wanted to print fiction in their newsletter, I do not know. It was an initiative that one of their executives thought would increase brand awareness or something. I don't know, but they paid me $100 and a 3-foot by 3-foot sheet pizza, and I still consider that to be one of my best paydays ever. I was very proud of that one.
That's amazing. And other than getting paid in pizza, any lessons from that experience that stayed with you?
I did actually. I learned an important lesson shortly after that, which is that actually money can be exchanged for goods and services, and if you're paid in cash, you can buy all the pizza you want. That was the big lesson.
Very profound lesson there. I love it. Okay, well, this has got to be wild to have your novel, your story, get made into this major motion picture released by Warner Brothers. How does it feel? I know this is, you said, your 5th time seeing it in the theater since it was released. My 2nd time. I think it gets better every time. How did it feel?
I mean, there's really no words to describe this experience. I've said this before, but I still cannot rule out the possibility that I'm right now in an intensive care unit with a heavy drip of morphine, and Jennifer's just getting ready to pull the plug. I appreciate you waiting until I got to see the film first. That was all I really ever asked out of this process. I mean, I don't know if you're aware of sort of how this came to be, but this novel was turned into my agent in December of 2019. Just the raw PDF, unpublished, didn't have a contract, nothing. 23 days later, Warner Brothers had optioned this for film. And I cannot explain to you how much that is not how this business works. Ordinarily, you know, the book is published, it becomes a bestseller, people get excited about it, then the studio comes calling. This was completely backwards from that. I mean, the improbability of this experience is so great that I really cannot express it.
So did you find out, obviously it's a great story, great book, but like what happened that made it so quickly picked up?
The book scout that my agent got in touch with had worked previously with Jeremy Kleiner and Brad Pitt in their production company Plan B, who had just joined forces with Warner Brother at that time. And Plan B had previous experience with director Bong because they had done Okja together released in 2017. And you probably picked up, if you've read the book, if you've seen the film, director Bong and I share a lot of sensibilities. We really see eye to eye on a lot of things in terms of the social commentary, the dark humor, the sort of fondness for over-the-top absurdity from time to time. And apparently Jeremy, when he got a look at this, just said, this is Bong. And they'd been looking for a chance to work with director Bong again. And director Bong, as it turned out, of course, he had just come off Parasite. He had just won, 4 Oscars, and was considering what his next project would be. And he had started working on another project, which was a sort of a true crime thing. And around that time, came to sort of a crisis of conscience. And after interviewing some of the people who had been involved in the actual incident that it was based on, and decided that this wasn't something he could move forward with. So he needed something else. One of the first things he said to me when I met with him was, I want to thank you. You saved me from that other project. So it was just a confluence of good fortune. Amazing. Really, again, difficult to believe.
And so where were you when you found out?
I was sitting at my breakfast table and I got a text, and it was from my agent. It was just a link and it said, click here. And I'm not an idiot. I've done cyber safety. I don't like, this is a phishing attack, right? Obviously, I'm not going to click that. But then it's Paul. So I clicked it, and it was a link to a Deadline article saying that Bong Joon Ho and Robert Pattinson were going to be doing this project based on Edward Ashton's novel. And my wife was sitting across the table from me, and the first thing she said was, "Oh my God, who died?" Because the blood just drained out of my face, and I had no, this is a good cardiac arrest. This is the kind that we like. So no, it was just that I literally got a text.
I got to stop you right there. Did you say Pattinson or Patterson?
That's story. Yeah. That's okay. Now you're trying to get me in trouble. I've already been down this road once.
The audience, anyone know this story? What happened?
Yeah.
Really, not internet crowd. Let's maybe with these.
So when I saw this, I opened up my social media accounts and I posted about how Robert Patterson was going to be starring in a film based on one of my books. And I have never been roasted the way that I was roasted for those. I mean, I must have gotten 2,000 replies in the first hour and a half after that. You idiot. The greatest actor of our generation is starring in a film based on your book, and you can't even spell his name. They were so mad.
It wasn't a publicity stunt.
Oh God, no. No. I was the villain of the internet for a week. No, this was awful. I will say, we've all made nice. Robert's fan clubs are all my friends now, and the head of Robert Pattinson Worldwide actually came to one of my book signings just to give me a hug. So we're all friends now, but it was a very rough introduction.
Amazing. I'm so glad we covered that one. Trevor, you're doing a great job. Stop it. So what was the inspiration? What was the inspiration behind Mickey 7?
Two different things. So the basic themes of the book are really based, like most of my work is based on my own sort of weird obsessions. I've always had a thing about the teletransport paradox. So the teletransport paradox is a philosophical question. It goes back to 1750, actually. It was originally posed, at least the earliest reference I could find to it, as a query to the English Royal Philosophical Society. And the question was, if one could transpose one's soul into a new vessel identical to the first, would this be the same person or a new being altogether? Which, it's amazing to me that they were thinking about this, hundreds of years ago, before any of this was remotely practical. Ray Kurzweil right now really wants to do this and thinks that it is possible. He wants to upload his brain into a computer system, and the man takes 300 pills a day to try to survive long enough. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. So this is something that is actually potentially possible now, was not remotely then, but it's something philosophers have been chewing over ever since. And the way that I pose it in the book, which if you read the book, you probably saw this, is this: if you imagine that when you go to sleep at night, you don't just go to sleep, you die. And someone else wakes up in your bed the next morning. They have all of your memories. They look just like you. They think they're you, but they're not. You've been extinguished the night before. And the same thing will happen to that person the next night. Can you prove to me that that's not exactly what happens? And the answer is no. You can't. Your life would be no different whatsoever if that was exactly the way that the world works. And that's what the teletransport paradox is. And that is the central question of Mickey's life, because that's exactly what happens to him. He dies, and then he wakes up, and he feels like himself, and he has all of his memories, and he remembers dying even. But is that the same point of view? Is it the same person behind his eyes looking out? And that's a question we can't answer.
And are you drawn to this because of the philosophical questions, or because of some fear or trauma, scare?
I'm just a weird guy. It's just
because I thought this was like a Star Trek thing, where it's like transporters are the same thing, and it's only been around since the '60s, but being around for so long as a thought.
That was probably where I first was introduced to it, was watching Star Trek when I was a little kid, and like it was clear to me when I was 6 years old that transporter beam was a murder machine. That was not a transportation device. I could see, like, that dude dissolved. Like, I saw him dissolve. That looked really painful. There's no way you would. And I think there's isn't there a character in Star Trek who won't get on the transporters?
Just don't get going talking about Star Trek, or we'll be here till 4 a.m. Okay, just don't do it.
But yeah, that's where I first saw the idea.
Good job. Great. So when you're looking in all your novels, like where do you start? Like, what do you have the inspiration and build a story around that idea? Where, I get to it.
I usually start with an image, whether it's a story or a novel. I'm a very visual person, and I think visually. The start of this novel was an image of a man broken and freezing at the bottom of a crevasse. Mm-hmm. That picture was stuck in my. This was 2015. This goes back a ways, way before the novel was anywhere near drafted. And that picture just stuck in my head for a while, and I knew this was something I wanted to write about. So I wrote maybe 500 words just of his internal monologue. I didn't know where he was. I didn't know if this was on Earth or someplace else, if it was the future or the present. I didn't know how he got to the bottom of that crevasse. And so I just sort of went, and like that kind of went okay. And I thought, he needs a friend. And so I introduced Berto, and Berto wouldn't save him. I couldn't figure out, why won't Berto save him? What a jerk. And that's when I came up with the idea of the expendable. Berto won't save him because he's an expendable. And the title, Mickey 7, initially was just sort of his communicator handle. I had no concept that it was because he had been killed 7 times. That wasn't until later, until after I'd already written almost an entire short story around this. And I'm like, oh, okay, 7. He's died 7 times. That's why. So I'd like to say that I had a plan for all this, but I don't. I never do. I think all this stuff gets plotted out somewhere in my amygdala or something, or my medulla oblongata, and it just floats up to the surface at some point. But it looks to me like I'm just kind of making this up as I go. But I know that some people don't work that way. A lot of novelists don't work that way, but that's always the way I've operated.
Well, so you have this vision, this image. You start working it out. What's your process for actually getting to your first draft? Is it from there? Are you outlining? Are you writing the entire go through and then countless editing?
No, I find my way through a novel the way that you would find your way down a dark, foggy road in the middle of the night. I trust that, again, the work's getting done somewhere. It's getting done in the back of my head. I live in the woods, and I spend a lot of time walking with my wife and our dog in the woods. And there are plenty of times where she'll just stop and she'll say, "You're finishing a chapter right now, aren't you? Like, I've been talking to you for 10 minutes. You haven't heard a damn word I've said." "It's okay. You're done now, though, right?" And I'll say, "Yeah, I'm done. I just figured out this one, and then I can talk again." But that's, that the processing's going on in the background, and it does sort of take over my system sometimes.
Why science fiction?
That's a good question.
Thank you very much. Is that everybody?
I actually started when I first started publishing. I actually was writing literary fiction, more sort of contemporary literary fiction. I got a little bit of a reputation in mostly writing short stuff. One of my short stories wound up on the curriculum for the University of Vermont MFA program. And then I had a kid, and suddenly I couldn't justify spending hours staring at a keyboard every day when these little people, I eventually had 3 of them, wanted to play with me and thought I was cool. And I didn't write a word for 14 years. And then, much to my surprise, and this will probably shock a lot of you, apparently teenagers don't think their dads are the coolest thing in the world and don't want to hang around with their dads all day. And so some time came back to me, and I won't go through how Jen takes all the credit for me starting to write again, but she does, and she's right to do so. But I started working again, and when I started writing again, I decided I wanted to do not what I thought was right or had been taught was the sophisticated thing to do. I wanted to do what I loved, and what I'd always loved was science fiction, and so that's where I started up.
Did I also read that it was maybe a little too much civilization that was played? Did I read that? Is that
Yeah, there was a stage in between spending all my time taking care of my kids and starting to write again, where I was spending all my time playing Civ 5. Yeah, that's
the best of the Civs. I'm with you.
Yeah, it was. It was a good one. It was a good one. But yeah, Jen did it at one point say, if I wanted to be a single parent, I would have gone to a sperm bank, and that was that was when Civilization got deleted from my laptop, and I decided to do more productive things with my time.
I have a question for you. Bong Joon Ho has had like a 30-year career and is internationally renowned and directed one of the best true crime films I've ever seen, Memories of Murder. And if nobody's seen Memories of Murder, or yes, exactly. If you haven't seen Memories of Murder, it's available through the Criterion Collection. It's a masterpiece. But he is an auteur, and he takes things and he has his signatures, he has his themes, he makes his films his own. Were you initially concerned that an auteur was adapting your book?
So let me just rephrase your question slightly. You're saying, was I, an obscure mid-list author, concerned that an Oscar-winning director wanted to make a movie out of my book?
And how much pizza did you get?
I guess I'm referring to the famous Stephen King, Stanley Kubrick thing.
I hate to break this to you and be a disappointment. I am not Stephen King. I do not have Stephen King's career clouding this world. No, as someone in my position, to say that I'm worried about what Bong Joon Ho will do to my work I don't know if that made me the worst person in the world, but it would put me in the bottom 10 for sure. And I don't want to be there.
I mean, the book and the movie share similar themes of have and have not. And I saw right away what Bong saw in the book.
Yeah, and that's, of course, that's the other side of it. I don't know enough directors to say who is the sort of director that I would have been worried that he was going to absolutely butcher my work. But I will admit to occasionally having nightmares that I would have been the man who destroyed Bong Joon Ho's career, but I was never worried that he would be the one who would destroy mine. Right. That was never a concern for me.
Gotcha.
Well, obviously, as a rational person, any adaptation of your book's going to go different places. It's hard to put novels into films. It's hard not to see the movie's interpretation of Marshall, right, with the red hats and the little dance, which I didn't catch the first viewing there, as, a nod to a certain political group right now. How did that feel? What was going on in your head? Because the Marshall in your book is I think, quite different than what we see up here. Certainly it ends differently for both. I'm just curious about sort of your reaction seeing it. I'm assuming you saw it in London for the first time, or did you see it at a time?
No, London was the first time I saw it. I'd read the script, of course, and I'd been there to see some of the filming. I didn't see any of Mark Ruffalo's performance when I was there on set. Yeah, obviously the characters, several of the characters are very different. Berto, Timo, very, very different characters. I think one, I said Director Bong and I see eye to eye on a lot of things. One thing where we differ, I think, and this probably has something to do with literature versus film. I tend to write characters in shades of gray. I don't really believe in sort of a pure good and a pure evil character. I feel like everyone works from their own motivations. They have to have their own internal motivation, and everybody thinks they're on the right side of history. Marshall, in my book, he winds up being wrong. He's on the wrong side, but he really believes he's doing what's best for the colony and for the survival of the humans there. Director Bong takes things a little more from those shades of gray to black and white, and the good characters are good and the bad characters are bad, and I think that probably works better on the screen. I think it's really hard to see those shades of gray on the screen.
There's quite a dichotomy in the film between 17 and 18, but in the book, it's far more subtle between 7 and 8, or at least that's what I got. What did you think of that dichotomy being kind of more black and white, and how Pattinson handled that performance of these two extremes?
So that was really a matter of different aspects of the question that Director Bong wanted to address versus what I wanted to address. So what I was looking at in putting these two characters side by side was really the question of identity and personhood. And are these really the same person? And so to make that a difficult question, I had to make them very, very similar. They're different they have 6 weeks of experience that is not shared between them. And my question is, well, how much different am I than I was 6 weeks ago? How much different am I than I was 6 months ago? I mean, I am tremendously different than I was when I was 22 years old. My wife has said many times she would not have gone out with me once, let alone marry me, if she had met me when I was 22. I'm a very different person now. I feel like I am a different person than I was a year ago or 2 years ago, even, although the differences are more subtle. 6 weeks, even more subtle yet. Director Bong wasn't interested in that particular question. He wanted to look at this more of as a coming of age story. Yeah. And he saw going, and that's also part of the reason why he went to Mickey 17 instead of Mickey 7. He wanted to emphasize the transition from 17 to 18 as being from a boy to a man. And 18 is sort of a symbolic age for taking on the age of adulthood. So he was looking at a little bit different symbolic and philosophical question than I was, and I totally understand that.
Right. I got to say, one of the things I love in the book, page 202, everyone just go right to that, is backstory on multiples and why it's such a huge crime in your galaxy, in your world. I would have loved to have seen that on the screen. I know that there's no way they could have had that much time to kind of go into all that backstory. Were there any sort of babies in your book, not necessarily themes, but little pieces or scenes or something that you wish that had translated up there?
Yeah, I mean, the Manikova's story obviously it's a favorite of mine as well, and I would have loved to see it. But to have Manikova's story there, you would have had to have the whole sort of many worlds universe that I built in the book. And as you say, that was one of the first things Bong said to me was, I don't have time on screen to build all that. I just can't do it. I have to have them coming from Earth. So I totally understood that wasn't going to be in there. I did appreciate that he still included Manikova because he's one of my favorite characters. I appreciate, and I don't know how many of you noticed that the placards they were holding over in front of him said Ashton PD on them. That was a nice little Easter egg that Director Bong dropped in there for me. So I did appreciate that. I would have liked to see a little more addressing the ship of Theseus question, which is another thing that really, really interests me and touches a little on my scientific work. But again, he didn't really get into that.
Yeah, you want to tell for those who haven't maybe read the book yet, you want to explain?
Yeah, sure. So the ship of Theseus is, again, this is another philosophical, this goes back to Plutarch. So this is several thousand years old. And the idea is Theseus is sailing around the world, and as he goes, bits and pieces of his ship break, and he has to replace them. He has to replace a board here, has to replace a line there. By the time he gets back years later, every single bit and piece of that ship has been replaced. And the question is this the same ship? And the interesting thing to me is that is exactly analogous to us, to our lives. And Plutarch didn't know this, but we know this now. There's not a single cell in your body right now that was part of your body 20 years ago. Not one. You are a completely new organism than you were 20 years ago. You are the ship of Theseus. You have been replaced cell by cell by cell and are a completely new thing. Are you the same person you were 20 years ago? And here's where my work comes into this. One of the things I work with is a technique called fMRI. It allows us to see what part of your brain is working at different times and doing different things. If we put you in the scanner and ask you to think about something you did yesterday or something you will do tomorrow, there's one particular part of your brain that lights up. If I ask you to imagine something I'm doing today or tomorrow, a totally different part of your brain lights up. If I ask you to remember something that you did 20 years ago, which part of your brain do you think lights up? It's the other person part. So on some level, your brain knows that wasn't you. That was a completely different organism 20 years ago.
That is freaky. Speaking of which, Trevor, your turn.
On No Win Scenario, we talk about science fiction, but we also talk about mental health because it's, I don't know, it's a very passionate subject of both of ours. One thing I'd like to know is mental health, especially as a creative, is it taxing? Is the creative process taxing to your mental health, or does it invigorate your mental health? Does it maybe fix things or repair things, or is it a process that really takes it out of you?
It's definitely not taxing to my mental health. I think, I'm the only one in my family who's never seen a therapist, and I think maybe that's because I serve as my own therapist through my writing. If you read my entire oeuvre and you match it up with times in my life, you'll see that I'm working through different traumas in my life through my writing. There was one stretch of about 3 years where my oldest kid, who was my first fan and my first reader, a really perceptive reader, really helpful to me as a critic. Every time I handed a story to them, the first thing he said was, "Which way did I die this time?" Because every single story was in some way was a father losing their child. This goes back to, if I could just indulge with like a 2-second story, when my kid Kira, when she was 18 months old, we took her to the beach, and it was a nice day. It was hot. She was playing in the sand. I thought I'd take her out in the water. I walked her out about waist deep, and Jennifer was on the beach with the camera, and she told me to turn around and smile. So I turned around, and then she screamed, and I was lifted off my feet and flipped over and slammed headfirst into the sand, and I lost consciousness, and I lost my child. And I came to about, probably 2-3 seconds later, and I popped up out of the water, and I can feel my heart start to race right now just telling you this story. This happened 26 years ago, and it is still these things. I once hung by these 3 fingers over a 60-foot fall while I was free solo rock climbing. That moment with her on the beach was the most terrifying, far and away the most terrifying moment of my life. Wow. Now, I came up and spun around, and and I saw a fan of blonde hair on the water. And I snatched her up, and she thought it was great. She was laughing. She thought she just had the funnest ride in the world. But if she'd had a short haircut, I don't know if I would have got her. I don't know if I would have got her back. So I definitely worked through that in multiple iterations through my short stories and my novels.
Wow. It's interesting because so much of your work, and especially Mickey 7, is about survival and the cost of human survival, and whether it's worth it, and what humankind's willing to do and how we treat people. And yet you're funny. Which, given your science background and the seriousness of survival of the species, is kind of interesting. How do you balance the sort of humor versus the seriousness of what you're getting into?
I think humor is a really important part of the work that I do, because I do touch on a lot of dark themes. I mean, this book, Mickey 7, and this movie have some really dark stuff in them. I mean, a lot of really bad stuff happens. A lot of bad stuff happens to Mickey. There's a lot of sort of deep thinking in there. And I think without the humor, it wouldn't be palatable. I think of it like cooking. I fancy myself to be an accomplished chef. And one of the things you have to do in cooking, obviously, is balance. You have to balance sweet with salty. You have to balance hot with sweet. And I think of humor as sort of like the sweetness that's baked into the cake to make it palatable.
Before we get to some questions, I got to ask you to explain this part of your life. Talk about a little bit of your scientific background a little bit more, and
So I have a PhD in medical imaging. If you want to look at what my actual, where I made contributions to the scientific world, it's primarily in a technique called dynamic contrast enhanced magnetic resonance imaging, which is a technique for looking at blood flow in vivo. So we use it for cancer. One of the things that cancer does before it can spread, it has to grow blood vessels into it, because that's what allows the cells to sort of spread and flow through your body. That happens when tumor hits about 1 centimeter typically. And so this is a technique that allows us to image the blood flow inside the tumor. And that's something that is highly predictive of whether it's going to spread. And obviously the spread of tumors is one of the main ways that they get you. So it's an important thing to know. So that's my scientific background. My job right now is developing new drugs for cancer, for oncology.
What do you hope people get from your writing? Let me put it that way.
I mean, I hope they have a fun time. Writing, in my view, should be entertaining. You should finish a book and say, wow, that was great. I had a really good time reading that. And if you got some philosophical stuff out of it, or you learned something you didn't know before, that's all great. That's all gravy. But the most important thing from my perspective is it should be entertaining. You should have a good time.
Okay.
That's my philosophy on all of life, by the way.
All of life.
It should be entertaining. You should have a good time.
Awesome. All right. Let's see. Let's go for some questions. We've got a mic over there.
Hi. How's it going?
Yep, you're good.
Yeah? Okay. So with the printer, it seems like it's like printing out the body and the brain. But I was curious if you see memories and consciousness as also being something reducible to physical matter, or is that more so something reducible to like information?
So from a physiological standpoint, memories are stored as weightings on pathways between neurons. I mean, that's what our memories actually are. We've got these connections that form between neurons. Connections form, connections break, and some connections are strengthened, and they're strengthened by repetition. So that's, if you want to know like what is a memory is a pattern of interconnections between neurons that has been overweighted due to repetition and observation. That's a really crappy answer, though, in terms of what we experience as human beings. To me, memory is something a little more ineffable than that, a little bit more malleable. And whether that's something that could actually be extracted and stored, like Ray Kurzweil, as I said, one of the chief scientists of Google, really wants to do. He believes that if he could store all of his memories, upload them to some incredibly advanced computer system, that would be a form of immortality for him. I think that's nuts, personally. I don't believe that would be immortality. I just believe that would be a computer system that knew how to break into his bank account and steal all his stuff. But that's a philosophical question. It depends on whether you're a pure materialist, as Kurzweil appears to be, or someone who believes that there's more to us than just the material connections that make up our bodies and our brains.
Hey, Ed, it's Bree. I had a question about how, if you base your characters off of people you know in real life, and I'm mainly just drawing a connection between Nasha and the stories you're sharing about Jen so far. Like, I feel like we get to get a bit of your wife's character and how strong she is, and Nasha is a very strong character. So just wanted to know if that was intentional. Maybe there are other characters in Mickey 17 that are inspired by people in your life.
Well, if you look in the front of my book, you will see all places and characters in here are, for legal purposes, fictitious, based on no persons living or dead. That being said, yeah, I steal from everyone I meet and everyone that I know. There is a real Mickey who was the initial inspiration for the Mickey in Mickey 7. If you look at the description of Mickey in the book and then compare it to a picture of the two of us together when we were 19 years old, you'll see some real similarities there. Obviously, I fictionalize everything and it's not really Mickey in there. Just like Nasha isn't really Jen, but I drew. There were parts, in particular in Antimatter Blues, there were parts in there where I had to ask her permission to write particular scenes or particular sort of aspects of the story because it was touching a little close on our relationship, and she was gracious enough to give me permission to do that. If I ever come that close to a real person, I will reach out to them and make sure, like Mickey was aware of what I was doing here and gave me his blessing as well, even though I said I'm going to kill you a bunch of times. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's okay. He's good. So yes, there is some real world people who kind of sneak in here.
Has he seen the movie and has he responded to his?
Yeah, he flew up to Rochester to be with me for the premiere event that we did in Rochester. It was he sat up in the balcony with me and watched the film. It was a really special moment for me.
Can I ask Jen a question?
Oh. This is where it gets exciting, everyone. We're running a mic over.
Do you read? Does he show you chapters of the book as it goes? Does he wait until it's done and you get to read it? Does he give you any insights, any hints or anything? Or how do you experience his books?
Well, I'm going to be very honest. I wait till they're in ARC form.
Yeah.
I'm not one of the beta readers. I'm an academic. I read digital stuff for my job, and I prefer to hold the book and to see what he's created when it's ready. My first two children are the ones who really are part of that process, who get chapter by chapter or section by section. And I am interested, but I do prefer to just take them as they are completed and enjoy that ride. Particularly like the Antimatter Blues. I did give my consent, but each one I've enjoyed more and more, to the point of The Fourth Consort has really been a super fun read for me. So no.
And do you pace back and forth while she's reading it?
No, that's very bad form. Once I've handed something off to her, I go and disappear and let her do her thing. I would be far too nervous to be sort of watching over her shoulder while she was reading.
Yeah.
I will say, great job with the plugs of all the books. This is great.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I'll ask one if I may.
Yeah, okay.
I've read Mickey 7, enjoyed it very much. You have more in that universe, if I'm correct, that I haven't read. Did the movie change the direction of the books at all as things were being decided, like how they would be presented in the movie, or is the canon of the books completely separate from the film?
No, the books and the film are two entirely separate things. There is a second novel in the series. It's called Antimatter Blues, which we were just discussing. But, to be clear, this movie was filmed in 2022, the late 2022. Antimatter Blues was written in 2020 and 2021. So the publishing cycle is so long. When you see a book come out, it was written, usually 2 years before. So it's a little interesting because the ending of the movie does not jive with the setup for Antimatter Blues. So if I had been coordinating with the movie, I don't know, maybe I would have done something different to encourage Warner to make a sequel film. That's really not going to occur with the book that I have now and the way that this movie ends.
What has the movie being in production and then coming out now, how has that changed the way your life has been?
I mean, it hasn't changed my life at all.
Your kids are there,
my life is like hanging out in the woods and walking my dogs and like trying to cure cancer. That's kind of what my life
Small
is.
goals, yeah.
But obviously it's been a huge boon to my writing career. There is no substitute for the publicity that something like Hollywood exposure can provide to a writer. A really successful, like a New York Times best-selling book will sell maybe 75,000 copies in a month. 75,000 copies in a month will get you well up the New York Times list, right? A movie is a flop if it doesn't have like 10 million people see it in the first weekend. That just the volume of people who are exposed to something like this and who, maybe stick around long enough to see my name up there, the second card on the credits, and think, maybe I'll take a look at his books. There's no substitute for that from a publicity standpoint, and that's been hugely helpful.
Let's take it full circle. Knowing what you know now, what would you tell that young author being paid in pizza to do or do differently?
I would not tell him anything at all, because everything that he did has led to where I am now. And any tweaking of that might have led me to somewhere else. And I'm really happy with where I am right now. I really like where my life is. I love the life that I have. And anything different, there are a lot of bad things that have happened in my life. Everybody has bad things that happen in their life, but everything that happens in your life leads you to the place that you are. And if you're happy where you are, it doesn't make sense to want to go back and change the things that led you there. And so I would be way too afraid of the butterfly effect. I would not go back and say a word to that person.
Well, that sounds really healthy. Amazing. Oh man, I can't end on something that happy, can I?
Yes, you can.
Oh, I can? I was thinking one more. So what would you tell a young writer? We like to talk to people in the industry who are working at a young age too sometimes. And what advice would you have?
I mean, as far as being a writer, the important thing is to understand that when you write, you're writing because you have something to say and you want to express yourself. One of the lectures that I get, I've got a bunch of book talks that I give. And one of them talks about the many worlds hypothesis, right? The interpretation of quantum physics, it says every time you make a decision, the universe actually splits in two. And so all possibility, if you've seen Rick and Morty, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So, it is certainly true that in like 99% of all universes, this movie never happened. And probably I never got a second publishing contract after 3 Days in April. And like, I'm just a humble syrup farmer somewhere or something like that. And the question is, if that had been the case, if I never like made a nickel from my writing, would I still be writing? And the answer is yes, absolutely. I'm not one of these people who's like, oh, you shouldn't want to get paid as a writer. No, you should definitely want to get paid as a writer. But you shouldn't expect it's going to happen, because if you're planning when you're 19 years old that my career is going to be, I'm going to write novels, you are probably going to starve to death. It is a really, really tough gig. So, when you write a book, it's not like doing a job to make money. If you want to make money, go work at Starbucks. You'll make a lot more per hour. It's something that you do because you need to express yourself. And sometimes Warner Brothers will back a dump truck full of money up in your driveway just randomly. And that is a thing that can happen. It's a thing that's very unlikely to happen. And so you probably shouldn't make it your plan.
Well said. And finally, because I'm still trading Trevor, what questions should we have asked you tonight?
I feel like you covered all the big ones.
Oh, did I talk too much? Did I talk too much?
No, you did fine.
No, I don't think you missed any beats. I thought that was pretty good.
I think he's saying I did pretty perfect there, Trevor, huh?
Yeah.
You did a great job, though. That's the only compliment you'll ever get from me ever.
All right. Well, thank you all for being here. Thank you, Ed.
Thanks
to the Weston Cinema for inviting us here.
Thank you so much.
And everyone, feel free. Let me thank Lynn and JB and Jesse and Charles River Media and Bruce, Josh, and Mike and Jim. And everyone, please go ahead and subscribe to the No Win Scenario podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and everywhere you get your podcasts. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Ed.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Someone's going to have to edit this into something usable.
You're going to have to edit it into something usable. Yeah.
That's what you wore today?
It's better than what you wore. Look at you. We should definitely ask him some questions for the podcast.
And maybe he has some career advice for you.
Trust me, I need it. I need as much career advice as I can get right now.
That's Trevor, everybody.
In today's world, mental health is everyone's concern. If you or someone you know is in crisis, please use these resources. For U.S. listeners, call 1-800-950-6264 or text Helpline, all one word, HELPLINE, to 62640 or email helpline@NAMI.org. That's NAMI.org. For our international listeners, please visit suicidestop.com. That's SUICIDESTOP.com.